Hello everybody. Hello everybody from Down Under. My name is Scott Matheson and I am the co-founder and director of Working in Australia. And wherever you are in the world, we welcome you to this webinar to find out how you can move to Australia. I can see that there's people everywhere today, so it's a good evening and good afternoon and good morning, and I think some people might be in the middle of the night even, which is fantastic to see. We've got some great panelists on today. I'll take you through what we're going to be doing, but I'll introduce the panelists first. But we are only going to be 30 minutes here. We like to move through this quickly and give you just a really quick snapshot and situational idea of how you can move to Australia. It's your sort of landing pad, your first touch point of moving to Australia. So congratulations for actually being here. Migration is a long pathway and you have to start somewhere. So just by being here, you're starting off, and that's fantastic. So welcome. So my panelists today, I'll introduce you first to Naseem Lalazari, born and educated in Sydney. Naseem is our head of immigration and visas and a licensed advisor MARA agent. Naseem, can you please introduce yourself, please?
Thanks, Scott. Hi, everyone. As introduced, my name's Naseem. So yes, that's correct. I grew up in Australia, where I went to school, studied law, and now a registered migration agent. So I've been with Working In for 10 years, and over that time have helped thousands of individuals make the move down to Australia. So I'm looking forward to speaking to everybody today.
Fantastic. Thanks, Naseem. And what we do as a business and what we have been doing for the last 20 years is help people move to Australia, and we do that through a mix of immigration and employment. So the other two panelists we have today are employment related. Our first is Brett McAdam. He's in Sydney at the moment. Brett, would you like to introduce yourself, say a few words in your state of lockdown?
Hey everyone, thanks Scott. Yeah, as Scott said, my name's Brett. Look, I've got over 10 years recruitment experience. I've lived offshore myself. I'm originally from New Zealand and moved to Sydney a few years ago. Also lived in Ireland and London, so I know what it's like to relocate to a new country and find a new job. And look, over the last 10 years, I've recruited across multiple disciplines like engineering, finance, health, and trade. So certainly know how to help people find a job.
Fantastic. Thanks, Brett. And of course, for Brett, it's 6:04 a.m. in Sydney. So thank you.
Nice and early.
Nice and early. Good on you. And our other panelists is our head of healthcare recruitment. There are quite a number of people in the healthcare industry on this webinar today. It doesn't exclusively mean this is for healthcare by any means, but I thought it would be very helpful to have Jo Bradshaw, a migrant herself, on this webinar. Jo, if you could say a few words and introduce yourself to everybody. Thanks.
Yes, hi, thank you, Scott. Good morning, afternoon, evening. Yes, as Scott said, I'm a migrant myself. I moved down under 20 years ago now, which I can tell you has flown by. I've been working for Working In for 15 years and bringing skilled migrants to this side of the world. And so, as Scott said, the area I work in is in healthcare recruitment. I've got lots of contacts across the sector and been working with lots of employers for many, many years. So I'm here to assist.
Thanks, Jo. And if anyone's trying to guess, Jo has substantially lost her Blackpool accent. Okay, so here we go. I want to just check the time. Yep, we're tracking along nicely. Okay, so obviously, we've still got COVID in the community. It's larger than life. What we're here to talk to you about is migration. You know, COVID's going to be here for a time, but migration is more often than not permanent. Okay, and over the last 2 years, about 500,000 skilled migrants have left Australia to go home to their home countries. And in normal times, Australia would welcome about 250,000 migrants a year. So by March next year, there will be a shortfall of about 1 million skilled people for Australia. And that is quite devastating for industry. but it also means a massive opportunity for skilled migrants around the world. There's a window here that people who have dreamed about migrating to Australia, they can jump through that window. And so we're here to say, let's not think about COVID, let's think about what's going to happen after COVID, because the Australian government are getting prepared for that. And start your journey now, which you are because you're on this webinar. But it's not a fast bit of paperwork that you submit and then suddenly you're on a plane and you're down into Brisbane or Perth. It's not quick. So the journey is long. It takes a lot of getting your documentation together. Choosing the right pathway is absolutely critical. There are multiple pathways to Australia. And the pathway that you take at the beginning is absolutely critical. You don't want to go down the wrong fork in the road. So I guess today is about giving you a snapshot of what those pathways are. And then at the end, we'll offer you this opportunity to do an assessment so that we can tell you, well, this is probably the best way to go. Okay. There's no fees for us at the end of this. There could be later on if you want to engage with us. We do immigration and employment. We're a business, but we have been doing this for 20 years. We love what we do. We help people. We're successful. But you're going to get a lot of information out of this. So if you don't want to put your hand in your pocket and you want to do it yourself, that's absolutely fine as well. We're okay with that. It's like painting your house. You can do it yourself or you can get somebody to do it. So that's where we sit. We're very open about that. But what we'll be doing today is just giving you the framework about moving to Australia. So I'm going to start off with Nazim because effectively for you out there who's listening today, there's two main pathways. Okay, one is you can come down to Australia without a job offer if you meet some criteria, or you will need a job offer to actually get your visa. So Nazim, can you kind of give us a snapshot or a summary of that, please?
Sure, Scott. So as those of you watching today might be aware, Australia has a whole lot of numbers that it uses to categorise its visa subclasses. And so some of those numbers, so if you're a subclass 482, refers to a visa based on a job offer. And some of the other ones, like a subclass 189, is based on the fact that you've just got the skills that the country wants and they're going to welcome you with open arms to do effectively whatever you want once you arrive. So there's two different pathways, and depending on your occupation, you might have the option of only one of those particular pathways, or you might have both. So when Scott referred to the fact that we can have a look and decide what pathways are available and which one you want to take, that's part of what's important to find out. So certain occupations, even with COVID happening, have the ability to be fast-tracked, so to speak. And so because of that, it's important to understand which of those various subclass lists you might fit onto to determine whether you do need the job in order to get the visa, or you can get the visa and then choose the job that you want. So it's quite open depending on what you do and which part of Australia you're willing to go to. I guess the most important thing to think about is whether you want the freedom to come to Australia and decide what you want to do once you're here, or you want to be moving over with the security of that employment first. I won't get into all of the numbers because there's lots of numbers and lots of acronyms, but effectively there's generally two pathways, and sometimes the job will lead to residence, and then you can do what you want after the fact as well.
Okay, so that's good. So let's say that you're on the list, you have an occupation that's on the list that allows you to apply for a visa, apply for permanent residency without a job offer. Is there an age limit to that, Nazim?
Australia is funny in that it sometimes has exceptions, but as a general rule, you need to assume that you have to make the move before you're 45.
Have to move before you're 45. Okay. And I know that there's differences because for some people who are sort of teetering on the edge and they may or may not meet that criteria, that the secondary option is going down a state-sponsored route. And can you just explain how that works? Because there's always a lot of chatter about the state-sponsored route.
Yeah, absolutely. So in Australia, when you're applying for permanent residency, the two main sort of pathways is the independent pathway, or the subclass 189, or the state-sponsored, which Scott just referred to, which is the subclass 190. Now with the subclass 190, you get additional points because a specific state has identified and said, we want this individual to come and live with us in our state. But as part of that, there might be certain conditions that you need to meet in order to be sponsored and nominated by that state. Sometimes that includes the requirement to already have a job offer in that state. So sometimes it feels a little bit like you need both. Even initially, yeah.
Yeah. So let's say talk about Victoria. In practical terms, how does that work? Let's say they have a list of, I don't know, let's pick an occupation, a civil engineer, and they might say, oh, well, we've got an allocation for a certain amount of civil engineers, and that list comes out, and then what happens? You know, how does it work?
So I think it's important to go back a few steps. What's really important for everyone to understand is that just because you've suddenly decided you want to move, you can't just apply. There's a lot of pre-steps that need to be sort of prepared, submitted, approved before you can move to the next step. So almost all skilled migration to Australia requires that you have something called a skills assessment. So if you're a civil engineer and you're wanting to move to Victoria and they're offering nominations for people like you, they're not going to invite you to apply unless you've got a positive skills assessment and you've submitted proof of that as part of your expression of interest. So I think it's important for everyone to understand that migration to Australia has lots of little stepping stones. They're not necessarily hard, but there's steps along the way, and you sort of can't jump from one to the next until you've sorted out the one before. So with every occupation, it's slightly different, and because of that, this is why we talk about, well, we need to see, you know, what are your circumstances and what do you need to do?
Absolutely. So look, Brett, I think there's a kind of a theme here, is that whilst you can potentially gain residency in Australia without a job offer, in our experience, people who go down that route anyway do want a job. I mean, we want money, of course, and cash flow, but we want to be stimulated. And very few people use their residency just to come down to Australia and hang out on a beach. So, from an employment perspective, you know, what's the market like now? When you're talking to employers every day, what are they saying?
Yeah, look, I mean, they're really suffering from skill shortages across numerous industries. I mean, you've got civil construction, it's just massive down here. There's huge projects across the states. The mining sector, there's absolutely crying out for people. There's hospitality, there's agriculture. But pretty much every sector seems to be really severely hit, you know, from people not coming into the country at the moment, but also there's been a big loss of people that have gone back to their original home countries, which has exacerbated the skill shortage even more. So it is a very tight labour market. You know, people aren't really getting much of a response from the local candidate market. So they are really, you know, keen to look at people from offshore again. You know, a lot of industry bodies are talking to political leaders about, you know, trying to ease up the restrictions to let more people into the country that can fill those skill shortages. So it's very topical. You see quite a bit of it in the news as well. So yeah, people need people at the moment. Employers need people for sure, and across a lot of different sectors.
And Brett, I know that you've been talking to employers that have labour agreements, which means they're allowed to bring in people that aren't on that list. So, you know, how are those companies doing, or employers doing, that actually have very unique skills that they require?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those companies, they've gone, you know, they rely on people from offshore for very unique skill sets, and, you know, that tap has been completely turned off for them, and they're often, you know, for roles that would take far too long for people to be trained up in, but they're real critical to their business. So again, they're really, you know, working at reduced capacity in some cases, and yeah, just waiting to get the borders open to get people in, basically. So yeah, they rely on people from offshore. They have an agreement with the government. So they're really feeling it.
It's quite an eye-opener, isn't it, that we're suddenly realising how much employers rely on migrant labour, and suddenly it's become a spotlight, and across all industries, it's being raised as a major topic, which all goes well for people who are listening here because, as Nazim said right at the very beginning, people who are applying for visas now, if they have the right skills, because Australia is all about having the right skills, you're going to be welcomed with open arms. But the demand for Australia, because of, I think, COVID, a lot of people have been sitting at home and, contemplating their life, probably like you guys that are listening, then the demand for Australia is going to be, exceptional, not only from the employer side, because the employers are screaming out, but also from people all around the world who are thinking, I want to move to Australia. So I guess once again, what we're saying, hey, it's August now. We're not expecting any sort of movement on the borders until 2022, but really the process should start now, even if what Nazim's saying around the skill assessment. So look, I think I'll just jump over to Joe now and sort of get down into that recruitment part a little bit more. Can you just explain, Joe, I mean, obviously Nazim's team will clarify what route the applicants will have to take, whether it's with a job or without a job, but we're assuming that most people will want to have a job regardless. So your recruitment process, it's pretty well set in stone. You've been doing it for a long time. Just to give people an assurance of how we work and, the clients you have and how that happens. Can you just explain your process, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, like with the visa process, we also have this quite a sort of step-by-step process for recruitment. And that starts with an initial consultation with me. And so what you've got to think about is it's not just about the job you're looking for. We need to dive much deeper into, what's your individual situation? Are you coming as a family? Are you coming as solo? Where do you want to live? What sort of lifestyle are you looking for? Do you want to work in the public health system, the private health system? About assessing your skills and your personal circumstances, and then figuring out where that best match is going to be for you, because ultimately we want you to be happy when you move. So it's really important, that initial consultation. Once I've done that, then it's about doing a job search and working with my network to find the best opportunities for you, and then getting you an interview, which is very exciting. With the interview, we provide lots of support in terms of interview preparation. So we have an extremely high success rate, almost 100%, which is awesome. And then we'll provide you with, once the job offer is in place, we'll provide you with ongoing support. So the recruitment really goes beyond the job. It's about supporting you in your journey as well. So post that job offer, we'll be giving you advice on, getting your travel exemption, handing you back over to visas and supporting you right until you're on shore, and also comfortable and settled in your new role.
And then once you're settled in your new role?
Well, once you're settled in your role, we still keep in touch with you, actually. I often go and visit my candidates that I've placed, which I love doing. It's a very rewarding part of the job. And we see you as being sort of part of the extension of our team, really. Once we've assisted you, we've built such a strong relationship with you that we do feel very connected to your ongoing journey. Yeah.
Look, and I think that's really important, especially if you're coming down here on the 4-year temporary visa, because there is a pathway to residency through your employer, through what's called the ENS. Nazim, can you just take people through how that works? So if you come down on the 4-year visa, which is a temporary visa, how do you actually become a resident of Australia? How do you get PR? And by the way, if you have any questions, please tap away. If we can't reply to them now because we're talking, we will send all the replies later. So please get into it. Thank you. Nazim, residency.
Yes, I know that's everyone's always first burning question. How do I get PR in Australia? So for individuals that might be offered a job and are able to come to Australia sooner on what's Scott's just alluded to, which is the subclass 482. There's two lists within the 482. There's the short term and the medium term. We'll stick with the medium term. If you're on that one, you can get a visa for up to 4 years. So that's for you, your family, so your partner, your children, all the rest of it, they can come down with you. Once you're in Australia, and if you stay employed with your employer for 3 years, after 3 years, with your employer's support and their sponsorship or further sponsorship, they can nominate you to be granted permanent residency under the ENS or subclass 186 pathway. So it's one of those, we'll make it a little bit easier in the start. You contribute to Australia, and so then because of that, the government gives you a slightly easier pathway to permanent residency. But it's a long game, and you do still need to be under 45 years of age at the time of applying for the residency, unless you're, like I said, you fit one of those very few exemptions, which are actually really hard to meet.
And ENS stands for?
Employer nominated sponsorship.
Yeah. So the idea is you come down on a 482 temporary visa. You, after how many years? 3 years?
3, yep.
After 3 years, if your employer agrees to it, they can sponsor you to residency. So, and that's a 2-year process?
Once you've lodged it, it can take up to 2 years. COVID's made it a little bit longer, but normally it's still within the year.
Yeah, okay. So we're just sort of managing the expectations here. And the reason being is that 482 visa, could work for a lot of people who don't apply for the 189 or don't meet the 189 criteria. And this is all the stuff that will become clear. So just to explain, we're going to be posting up a form that you can fill in. When you fill in that form, we'll come back to you in a reasonably quick turnaround, 48 hours or so, and we'll be able to give you a very quick answer. Hey, yeah, look, we think that you can migrate to Australia, or look, for whatever reason, it doesn't look, based on the information that you provided, that you can apply now, or you'll meet the criteria now. Then after that, in order to really get down and understand it more, we charge a fee, which is about equivalent of about 350 Australian dollars. So Nazim's team really understand your situation. It's a lot of work, actually, and we understand everything about you, all your work history, your medical history, if you've got any criminal convictions like drink driving, minor convictions, obviously your skills, your qualifications, whether they match with Australian qualifications. So there's a huge amount of information. And then we say, okay, based on what you've given us, this is the best possible pathway. And there might be multiple pathways, but it's about what is the best possible pathway. And for us, that just gives you, for a pretty nominal fee, to be fair, your locked in plan. And again, whether you use this or not, it's up to you. But it does say to you, hey, this is my plan. I can move to Australia, and this is the best possible route. So I think what you could probably hear from today is, whoa, there's a lot going on here. The Australian immigration system is actually really complex. Obviously, there's going to be a huge demand, and you don't want to get it wrong, because otherwise you go to the back of the queue, or you might end up actually not getting approved, which actually happens. Because one thing about Australia, Nazim, is it's quite strict. Very strict. Yeah.
Very strict. And they have very, very, there's very little room for error. Over the years, we've had people come and say, oh, we did this ourselves. It was declined. We've paid, I don't know, over $10,000 in government application fees. So it's not anyone helping you. That's just fees gone to the government. It's been declined, and there's no recourse. So you sort of think of getting professional assistance and advice at the front end of the process as a bit of insurance. There's no point, charging ahead and spending money if it's not actually going to work out for you.
Yeah.
If it is, do it the right way.
Yeah. So we will say, listen, if people are saying, yeah, I can get you residency and it's going to cost me $10,000, you pay me $5,000 now, we say, just be careful with that. There are other options, not to spend so much money up front, and just check to see whether actually you are eligible and whether you are getting the right advice. And on that note, again, Nazim, you are a MARA agent. Can you please just briefly explain what MARA is and what it means mainly for the protection of the people that are listening here, because it's really important.
Yeah, I don't know if people can see this little certificate here behind me, but registered migration agents, we've just recently been deregulated. We used to also with lawyers, so as a lawyer, if I wanted to become an immigration specialist, I'd get my MARA registration. So I've got my MARA registration, and that means that I have authority on behalf of the Australian government to provide immigration advice and assistance for people wanting to move to Australia. Everything that I do, or the advice that I give, is within the framework of the Code of Conduct. And so all of my actions are heavily regulated, and every year I need to get re-registered by proving that I have the skills and the knowledge and I'm fit to provide advice. So what that means is that it provides a protection to an individual like yourself who's looking to engage with a registered migration agent, because a government authority has already said, yes, I am able to provide you with advice because I've checked off all the boxes and I know what I'm doing. The other thing is that as registered migration agents, any funds we take in advance go into a trust fund or a client fund. So they're not just taken and then disappear. They're kept in trust, and it only comes out as we do different bits of work. So I guess, we operate the same as lawyers, so to speak. So you've got that kind of, I guess, consumer protection.
Lots of consumer protection, most importantly. Yeah. So there's a lot of insurance for you as a migrant. You're not going to be ripped off. You're protected by the Australian government through the MARA agent network. So look, it's 28 minutes past. We said we'd keep this for 30 minutes. I would like to talk more, because we haven't even talked about what's it like to live in Australia. What's the lifestyle? What's the cost of living? How do I move my money? How do I buy a house? There's, all sorts of topics here. You can sign up for our newsletters. You can like us on Facebook, and we'll be able to keep on updating you on a whole range of topics. And you can complete the free assessment as well, and that will sort of get you into our system, and then we can give you, we can tell you now, hey, do you meet criteria or do you not? And if you don't, what do you need to do to meet criteria? So I'd just like each of you to sum up quickly in the next minute or so. Joe, what are your tips now for people?
Yeah, well, look, obviously the first thing is to get the assessment done. And then obviously, get your CV prepared, maybe have a look into registration. Of course, any healthcare professional is going to need their registration to practice in Australia. So that's really important. And just sort of scope out thinking about, where do you want to live? What are you looking for? And then hopefully I'll get to meet you sometime in the future and assist you in securing a job.
Brilliant, thank you. And Brett, over to you. I do notice that there's a few New Zealanders on this webinar. So maybe you could sort of talk to them quickly as well in your summary.
Mm-hmm. So again, it's quite similar to Joe. If you require a visa, obviously see if you get assessed for a visa. Also look, if you are in New Zealand or anywhere in the world for that matter, the one thing I would firstly say is don't just spray your CV and apply randomly to jobs. You really do want to sort of partner up with someone like ourselves or another agency, and they can put a plan in place and find out what you're looking for, what regions you want to look at, what type of company is going to work for you, what culture works for you. Because we do talk to a lot of employers, and they say, look, we get all these applications from overseas, they don't know what to do with them. Whereas if you're talking to someone like us, then we can obviously work with you and represent you to that employer and, present a pathway for them. So, that would be my biggest piece of advice. It's not just simply just attack Seek and think I'm going to just send out a whole heap of CVs across Seek. Look, just do your research. Where do you want to live? It's a big country. It's a lot of options. Regional Australia, the cities, and have that in your mind where you want to go before you have a chat to us as well. We can help you with that too.
Good. Look, and for those New Zealand citizens that are on this webinar, you don't need a visa necessarily. If you're a citizen, So you can just talk straight to Brett around job opportunities. He's putting a lot of Kiwis into jobs over in Aussie. You still have to do your 2 weeks MIQ, but Australia's still open to New Zealand citizens, visa free. Okay, Nazim, quick wrap up, please.
Definitely, please start the process. If you're actually looking to move to Australia, you do need to take that first step. People that I spoke to 7 months ago, they were umming and ahhing. They said, look, even if you don't sign up with us, you just get started. This is the first thing you need to do. They've just popped up recently and said, oh, we see our occupations on the list. I was like, well, did you get your skills assessment? And they said, no. And I said, well, we can't do anything. So all those places were lost, so they missed out. So if you're actually serious about moving to Australia, please start so I can help you and you can get your dream.
We've heard that story literally hundreds of times over the years. So yeah, I mean, I think Nazim said something earlier where there's a lot of little steps, and you can't open the next door until you've shut this door. So, you don't know what those steps are. Please, if you're serious about this, start now, because each step takes longer than you think. It's just how it is. Okay. It is a linear process. You get there in the end, sort of like a long race, a long running race. You just put your head down and put one step after the other, but it's doable. And Australia will be welcoming you if you have the skills and the attitude and want to live a great down under lifestyle. So really thank you very much for logging in from all over the world. It's fantastic to have such a global audience here. And, stay safe. Delta's rampant out there. And hopefully we'll see you down here next year. Okay, thank you very much, and goodbye. Bye-bye.